My girlfriend went out for a ladies' gathering, but when she arrived back home, she uncovered something that changed everything forever. Hey Reddit, I'm 29 years old, and I've been living with my wife Lisa for 7 years. We had what I thought was a solid relationship, built on trust and routine. That night started like any other, with Lisa getting ready to go out with her friends. She mentioned casually that she wouldn't be home until after 1 a.m., tossing the words over her shoulder while rifling through our closet, searching for something specific. She was looking for her heels, the black ones with the silver buckles that I had gotten her for her birthday last year. I remembered buying them, remembered the way her eyes lit up when she opened the box. What I also remembered was finding that same box in her car trunk about 3 months ago, still with the tissue paper inside. When I had asked her about it then, she told me she hadn't worn them yet, that she was saving them for a special occasion. But looking at them now, I could clearly see that the soles were already scuffed. Just a girls' night, she said when I asked about her plans. Nicole, Jessica, maybe Stephanie will be there too. Probably just cocktails and romantic comedies. You wouldn't survive 15 minutes of it. She laughed at her own comment, but something felt off about the sound. The laugh didn't reach her eyes, and I'd heard that particular laugh before. In public, when she was talking to strangers or acquaintances. It had that fake lightness to it, clinging to her voice like damp fabric sticks to skin. I watched her fix her hair in the bathroom mirror, twisting it just enough to frame her face perfectly. It struck me that she never did that for me anymore. Not for work, not for our dinner dates, not even for our anniversaries. Yet here she was, spending extra time on her appearance for what was supposed to be a casual night with female friends. There was something else different too. She smelled different. She was wearing a new perfume, something sweet and expensive with a bold presence that left a trail when someone walked out of a room. I'd never smelled it on her before, never seen the bottle on our dresser. When I asked where they were planning to go for their girls' night, she answered without hesitation. Nicole's place. Curious, I asked if I knew Nicole's address, thinking I might have driven Lisa there before. For just a split second, Lisa froze. It was barely noticeable, just enough for someone who knew her well to catch it. Then she recovered and said, "You've been there before." But I hadn't. I would have remembered. I have a good memory for addresses and locations, and I was certain I'd never been to Nicole's house. Lisa left at exactly 8:15 p.m., and by 8:20, I was sitting in the driver's seat of my car, parked 4 blocks down from our house. I turned off the engine, killed the lights, and put my phone on silent. Sitting there in the darkness, I felt like a complete lunatic. My stomach was tied up in knots. My hands were cold against the steering wheel, and my eyes were locked on the rearview mirror, waiting for something I wasn't sure I wanted to see. At 8:31, I saw her car emerge from our neighborhood. My heart started pounding as I watched her take the main road, but she wasn't heading toward Nicole's area like she had claimed. Instead, she took the highway heading east toward downtown. I waited exactly 45 seconds before starting my engine and following her, maintaining a safe distance behind. I didn't use GPS or any navigation system. I just relied on instinct and the growing silence in my car that seemed to amplify every anxious thought running through my head. For 35 minutes, I trailed her through the city streets while my heart felt like it was punching holes in my chest. She didn't drive like someone going to meet friends for a casual evening. There were no missed turns, no hesitation at intersections, no checking her phone for directions. She knew exactly where she was going, moving with the confidence of someone who had made this trip many times before. At 9:05, she pulled into the parking garage of Sterling Tower, a high-priced, high-class residential building in the heart of downtown. I parked across the street, sitting in what felt like borrowed silence, and watched her go through a routine that seemed disturbingly familiar to her. She adjusted her lipstick using the rearview mirror, checked her teeth with her tongue, and smoothed down her hair one more time. What struck me most was that she was smiling. Not the nervous smile of someone running late to meet friends, but the anticipatory smile of someone excited about who they were about to see. I waited until she disappeared behind the elevator doors before I made my move. I didn't follow her inside immediately because I wasn't ready to see whatever I might find up there. I wasn't prepared to feel what that kind of visual confirmation might do to me. But I couldn't just sit in my car either, so I walked into the lobby like I belonged there, moving with purpose past the concierge, who barely bothered to look up from his desk. Then I asked a question I never thought I'd hear myself ask. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but I'm supposed to meet my cousin here, Kevin Williams. Is he in yet?" The concierge blinked once and responded matter-of-factly, Yeah, Mr. Williams came through maybe 15 minutes ago. Penthouse floor. Should I call up and let him know you're here? No, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll wait. But I didn't wait. Instead, I walked back outside, crossed the street, and sat on the hood of my car. The city lights around me didn't seem real anymore. Nothing felt real. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and every breath felt deliberate and forced. I stayed there for 25 minutes, staring up at the penthouse floor of Sterling Tower, before finally driving home through streets that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. When I got home, the house was quiet but still warm from her presence. There were small reminders of her everywhere. A wine glass sitting in the sink, her favorite sweater draped over the back of the dining room chair. Our life was still there, suspended in the same state she had left it in, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, at least for me. I walked to the kitchen and opened the drawer next to the fridge, the same drawer where we kept our old notepad for grocery lists and birthday reminders. I tore off the top sheet and wrote just one line. Lisa, I know. Don't bother lying again. Then I left the house without even bothering to close the front door behind me. I needed to be anywhere but there when she came home. She got back after 1:30 a.m. I know because she called me 8 times in a row once she found the note. I didn't answer any of the calls. Then came the text messages, starting with confusion and quickly escalating through panic to rage. What the hell is this? Followed by, are you serious right now? Then talk to me, and this isn't what you think. I turned my phone off rather than read any more of her desperate attempts to control the narrative. The next morning, I got a call from Nicole that confirmed everything I needed to know. Hey, just checking. Is Lisa okay? She asked, genuine concern in her voice. She was supposed to come by last night but never showed up. She didn't even answer our group chat messages. I didn't respond to Nicole's question. I didn't even blink. That was the moment it went from suspicion to absolute certainty, from doubt to war. Lisa had lied to Nicole just as easily as she had lied to me, spinning a web of deception that involved multiple people and required her to maintain different stories for different audiences. By Tuesday morning, the silence between us had taken on a different kind of weight. It wasn't the silence of confusion anymore. It was heavy with something raw and irreversible. I stayed at my buddy Jake's place, and he was good enough not to ask too many questions. He just handed me a beer, pointed at the couch, and said, "Whatever this is, you don't owe me an explanation tonight." But Lisa didn't stop calling. She texted every 3 hours like clockwork, alternating between fake confusion, manipulative sweetness, and threats of heartbreak. It was like watching some kind of performance where she thought I was weak enough to fold, that I'd crawl back with questions instead of already having the answers I needed. She didn't understand that I'd already seen enough to know exactly who she really was. The messages evolved over the days. They started with "I love you" and "please let's talk," then shifted to "if you're trying to punish me, it's working," and eventually became "you're being childish, honey. I can't fix this if you won't talk to me." That last one made me laugh bitterly. Fix what exactly? She was still pretending this was some kind of misunderstanding that could be resolved with the right conversation. That morning, I decided to call Nicole and tell her everything that had happened. At first, she didn't believe me. She said Lisa would never do something like that. But then she stopped herself mid-sentence, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice. That pause told me everything I needed to know. She did mention a guy once, Nicole admitted quietly, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. A friend from work, I think. At the time, I thought it was nothing, just venting about her job or something casual. But now that I think about it, she started changing after that. She started pulling back from all of us, not just you. That information lined up perfectly with what I had been observing for months. Lisa had been orbiting around me rather than being beside me. Her laugh at the dinner table had felt increasingly fake and forced. Her phone had become permanently attached to her hand, and she'd started sleeping with her back to me every single night, maintaining the same position and the same distance between us. At 1 p.m., I made the decision to go home. I needed to face this situation head-on rather than hiding at Jake's place indefinitely. When I opened the front door, she was there, sitting on the couch like a statue, wrapped in the blanket we had bought together on our last trip to Vermont. Her eyes lit up the moment I walked in, and I could see that she actually believed, truly believed, that I was there to fix things. She thought I had come crawling back, unsure and trembling, wanting her version of the truth. "Honey," she said, her voice cracking with what sounded like practiced emotion. It was soft and controlled, like someone who had rehearsed this script multiple times while waiting for me to return. I didn't say anything in response. I walked straight past her and went directly to the bedroom, where I grabbed the rest of my clothes, my passport, and my lockbox from the top shelf of the closet. She followed me, still talking, still trying to perform her way out of the situation. "It wasn't like that," she said, watching me pack. "You're jumping to conclusions. Nicole said you called her. Why would you do that? Why would you involve other people in our private business?" I stopped packing and looked her directly in the eye. "Nicole didn't lie to me," I said calmly. "She never had a reason to." Lisa's face changed completely when I said that. The softness fell away from her expression like a mask being removed. She straightened her back, narrowed her eyes, and said the line I'll never forget. "Well, maybe if you actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere." There it was. Not regret, not sorrow, not even an attempt at denial. Just that raw, twisted cruelty that revealed exactly who she really was underneath all the performances. She didn't even try to deny what she had done. She went straight to making it my fault. I felt something inside me catch fire when she said those words, even though my body felt hollow and numb at the same time. She kept talking, building her defense with every sentence. She said something about how I made her feel invisible, how Kevin made her feel alive again, how it wasn't just about the physical aspects of their relationship. Every word she spoke seemed to stab the air between us, but somehow none of it really hit me. I was already somewhere else mentally, already detached from the woman standing in front of me. "You lied," I said simply. "For how long?" Lisa rolled her eyes in exasperation, like I was being the unreasonable one in this situation. "Does it matter?" she asked with a shrug. "Yeah," I replied. "It does." She crossed her arms defensively and hesitated before answering. "A few months," she muttered, not meeting my eyes. I shook my head. "Try again." After another long pause, she finally admitted the truth. Almost a year. Then, with the audacity that only someone completely disconnected from reality could muster, she looked at me and asked, "Are you going to cry now?" That's when I laughed. I don't know where it came from, but it scared even me. It wasn't humor. It was pure disbelief manifesting as sound. It was a hollow, echoing laugh that didn't sound like my own voice, like it was coming from someone else entirely. The sound filled the room and seemed to catch her off guard. I picked up my bag, turned toward the door, and stopped just once to deliver my final words to her. "You don't get to call me honey anymore." I walked out without saying another word. This time, she didn't follow me. She just stood there in the bedroom we had shared for years, surrounded by the remnants of a life she had systematically destroyed with her lies and betrayal. It's strange how quickly the mind rewires itself after experiencing that level of betrayal. You expect devastation to hit like a storm, loud, chaotic, with warning sirens blaring. But for me, it came in silence. Not numbness exactly, but a cold, calculated silence that seemed to settle over everything. I drove for hours without any destination in mind, just taking back roads and highways, passing gas stations I'd never stop at, and diners lit with that sad yellow glow that makes everything look like a scene from someone else's life. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I ended up at a cheap motel 2 towns over, the kind of place where the bedspread feels like it's been on the bed since 1995, and nobody asks questions. The front desk guy didn't even look at me when I slid my card across the counter. I got the key, walked to my room, and locked the door behind me like I was trying to seal out the last 8 years of my life. The room was quiet, too quiet for my racing thoughts. So I opened her messages again, not because I wanted to forgive her or because I was having second thoughts, but because I wanted to know the full extent of what I was dealing with. There's a particular sickness in wanting to witness your own undoing, like poking at a bruise just to feel how deep the damage goes. What I found was worse than I had imagined. There were messages from Kevin, dozens of them, and they weren't even hidden. They were bold, casual, and arrogant in their assumption that I would never find them. The conversations revealed a level of comfort and routine that could only come from months of deception. "Tell him you're out with the girls," one message from Kevin read. "He buys it every time, right?" Lisa had responded, "LOL, of course he doesn't ask anymore." Another exchange showed Kevin writing, "Next weekend mine, no excuses," and Lisa replying, "Only if you wear that blue shirt I like," followed by a winky face emoji. My heart didn't race when I read these messages. It didn't even seem to move. It just sat there like a piece of lead in my chest while I watched my marriage rot in 12-point Arial font on a glowing screen. Then I found a photo that made everything exponentially worse. It was a selfie she had sent him, taken in our bathroom, wearing one of my shirts. The timestamp showed it was from the same night she told me she had stomach flu and stayed in bed all evening. I remembered that night clearly. I had made her soup, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I've got you," before leaving her to rest. I wondered if she had left the bed to take that photo and send it to him right after I walked out of the room, using my care for her as cover for her betrayal. The next morning, I filed for a legal separation. I didn't call her to discuss it or give her any warning. I went directly to the county office, signed all the necessary paperwork, and had it sent to our house by courier. This wasn't about creating drama or making a statement. It was about clarity. I needed to make a clean legal break from someone who had been living a double life for almost a year. That night, I got a call from her mother. "Sweetheart, what is going on?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "Lisa is absolutely hysterical." I told her everything. Every last detail of what I had discovered, from the initial suspicion to the messages I had found. She was quiet for a long time after I finished speaking. Then she said something that surprised me. "I always worried she'd do something like this. I just never thought she'd do it to you." 3 days later, Lisa showed up at Jake's place without any warning or invitation. She didn't knock, just walked right up to the door in her little yoga pants and oversized hoodie, like it was a casual Thursday morning visit. Her eyes were red and puffy, she wasn't wearing any makeup, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked like she wanted to appear wrecked, like she was performing the role of the victim in her own story. "Can we talk?" she asked when Jake opened the door. Jake stepped aside, clearly not wanting to create a scene on his front porch. I didn't want one either, so I let her come inside. We sat across from each other at his kitchen island, the same place where Jake and I had eaten pizza the night before while talking about anything except her. Lisa started with one of her signature sighs, that fake little inhale she always did when she wanted to generate sympathy from whoever was listening. "I made a mistake," she said, as if this entire situation could be reduced to something that simple. I didn't speak, so she continued building her case. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen. Kevin and I, it was stupid. It was never going to be serious." "You were in love with him," I said flatly, cutting through her attempt to minimize what had happened. She flinched at my directness. "I thought I was, but it wasn't real. He's not you." I laughed just once, just enough to let her know that she had completely lost her grip on me in this situation. She reached out across the counter toward me, but I pulled my hand back before she could make contact. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked. She blinked, looking caught off guard by such a direct question. "I want to fix this." "No," I said. "You want to feel better about what you did. That's not the same thing." She sat there for a long moment, blinking like she was waiting for someone to give her the next line in a script. Like this was all some kind of performance, and she had forgotten her part. Then she said something that revealed exactly how disconnected from reality she had become. "I don't deserve to be thrown away like this." I stood up, took my keys from the counter, and looked her directly in the eye. "You weren't thrown away," I said. "You set fire to the house and locked the door behind you. And with that, I walked out." That was the last time I saw her in person. What comes next is the unraveling phase. In the weeks that followed, Lisa became like a ghost with a megaphone, everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I blocked her phone number, her email address, her Instagram account, and even her Venmo account after she tried sending me $1 with a note that said, "Can we please talk?" She started reaching out to our mutual friends, telling them that I had abandoned her, that I had been emotionally distant for years, and that I had given up on our marriage without even trying to work things out. Her favorite line seemed to be, "He didn't even give me a chance to explain." Let me be completely clear about something. She had every chance imaginable to explain. I had handed her hundreds of quiet opportunities over the months leading up to this. The long pauses at dinner when I was clearly waiting for her to say something real. The way I stared at her when she laughed too hard at messages on her phone. The countless times I asked, "Is everything okay?" And she replied with, "You're overthinking things." "No, Lisa, I wasn't overthinking. I was watching you rewrite the rules of our relationship behind my back, and I was too loyal to admit what I was seeing with my own eyes. Jake had warned me that this part would come. The manipulation phase, the smear campaign. She started reshaping the narrative before the dust had even settled on our separation. To her circle of friends, she was the abandoned wife, the confused woman whose husband had just snapped without warning or explanation. What she didn't count on was that I had receipts. I knew Kevin Williams' full name, his address, and I had found his LinkedIn profile. It turns out he wasn't some faceless stranger from a distant world. He worked just 6 blocks from our house. He was a marketing guy with a smug little professional headshot and a bio that described him as an expert in building brand relationships. I found that description particularly ironic given the circumstances. I actually considered meeting him at one point, not to fight, but just to look him in the eye and see what kind of man knowingly participates in destroying someone else's marriage. But Jake talked me out of it. "Bro, she'll spin that in her favor too," he said. "Let it collapse on its own. Don't give her a villain to point at." He was absolutely right. The moment I removed myself from the narrative entirely, she started clawing at the walls for attention. She sent me a handwritten letter, which I wasn't planning to read, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter said, "Honey, if you're reading this, maybe you still care. I know I messed up. I know I broke something I can't fix, but I need you to understand. Kevin wasn't about love. He was about escaping. You were always there, and I took it for granted. I never stopped loving you. I was just lost. Please don't throw us away like this. Please give me one more chance to prove I'm still yours. Love, Lisa." There it was again. That same plea wrapped in victimhood. There was no real apology in those words, just grief for the consequences of her actions. She said she loved me, but she never mentioned the lies she had told. She never acknowledged the manipulation, the double life, or the complete gutting of our trust from the inside out. She was sorry that I had left, but not sorry for what she had done to make me leave. I put the letter in a box along with our wedding album, her little notes from past birthdays, and the necklace I had gotten her in New Orleans. All of it went into storage. That life was done, and I needed to stop carrying pieces of it around with me. Then came the tipping point that changed everything. I got a message from one of Kevin's co-workers, a guy named Brad who had recognized Lisa from a company holiday party. The message said, "Hey, I don't know you, but I feel like you should know. Kevin's been dating someone else for a few weeks now. Tall redhead, definitely not your wife. Just figured if you're going through stuff, maybe you deserve the truth." I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I was shocked, but because it all made perfect sense. Lisa had built her escape route on quicksand. She had blown up her marriage for a man who moved on before the ink on our separation papers had even dried. She didn't just cheat on me. She threw herself off a cliff thinking she could fly, and only looked down once she realized there was no one there to catch her. And I was already learning how to live without the fall. I didn't cry when I found out that Kevin had discarded her so quickly. I didn't smile either. What I felt, and this might sound strange, was clarity. It was like someone had finally turned the volume down on a room full of screaming noise that I didn't even realize I'd been sitting in for months. There was no satisfaction in learning about her abandonment, no sense of revenge or vindication. Just truth, cold and still and undeniable. Kevin had moved on so quickly, it made her look like nothing more than a pit stop on his commute to someone better. She wasn't his future or his great love story. She was a layover between better options, a temporary thrill he got tired of once she started talking like a woman with actual plans for their relationship. That's what hurt her the most, I realized. Not that she had lost me, but that she didn't even get him in the end. Now, without either of us, she was circling her old life like a drunk person, trying to find the right key for a locked door. She had crashed into herself completely. A week after receiving that message from Brad, I saw her again. I wasn't planning on it. I was just out grocery shopping, grabbing a few things for Jake and me. I'd started cooking more regularly, creating little rituals to help reclaim some sense of normalcy in my daily routine. I was in the produce section, scanning the oranges, when I felt that invisible presence that exists between two people who once knew everything about each other. I turned around, and there she was. Lisa was standing alone with no wedding ring on her finger. Her hair was pulled up in a lazy knot, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Not the kind that come from staying up late watching movies, but the kind that come from living wrong. From making choices that eat away at you from the inside. She looked directly at me and froze for a moment before saying, "Hey," like we were still married, like we were still anything to each other. I gave her a simple nod and nothing else. No smile, no flicker of recognition beyond basic human acknowledgement. She stepped closer to me, clearly wanting to extend this interaction. "Can we talk?" she asked. I looked down at the oranges in my hand, tossed one into my cart, and said, "You said everything in your letter." "That wasn't enough," she replied. "You're right," I agreed. "It wasn't." She looked down at the floor, and her voice softened in that way it did when she was trying to manipulate a situation. I know I don't deserve you. I stayed quiet, letting her words hang in the air without validation. But I still think about us, she continued. About the life we had. About the way you looked at me like I mattered. Kevin never did that. He used me, and when he got bored, I cut her off. Stop! She flinched like I had physically slapped her. I'm not your rebound therapist, I continued. You want closure? Here it is. You had a good thing. You betrayed it. You threw away a man who loved you without conditions for a man who didn't even bother pretending to care about you. That's not something you fix with apologies. That's something you live with. She tried to say something, but I stepped around her and started walking away. Take care, Lisa, I said over my shoulder. And I walked away from her for what I knew would be the final time. Did it feel good? No, but it felt finished. That night, I cooked dinner like nothing had happened. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat with Jake, and watched the game on television. He didn't ask how I was doing or probe into my emotional state. He just passed me the remote and said, "You've got better hands than half the guys on that team." In that moment, I realized that this part of my life, the Lisa chapter, was truly over. Not buried or forgotten, but finished in a way that felt clean and final. Lisa was a storm I had survived, and what remained in the aftermath wasn't wreckage. It was space. And space, I was discovering, is a hell of a thing to have again. I didn't expect the dreams to linger even with all the truth laid out on the table, even with my life slowly stitching itself back together in ways that made sense again. My mind still liked to wander at night, but these weren't nightmares. They were worse. They were memories of the good times. Lisa in the passenger seat on long drives with her feet on the dashboard, singing off-key to songs she never knew the lyrics to. Lisa making pancakes in one of my old t-shirts, flipping them too early and laughing when they landed half-cooked on the plate. Lisa curled up next to me during winter storms with her hands tucked into my hoodie, like we were some kind of permanent thing that would last forever. I hated those dreams more than I hated the betrayal itself, because they made me forget for a few minutes every night. They made me remember the woman she had pretended to be, the version she had shown me long enough to make me believe she was real. Then I'd wake up, and the truth would settle back in like dust covering everything. Around this time, the legal paperwork was moving forward. My lawyer, Rachel, a friend of Jake's sister, was the kind of no-nonsense woman that Lisa would have hated on sight. She had short hair, dry humor, and a laugh like broken glass. I liked her instantly because she didn't try to sugarcoat anything or make me feel better about the situation. She said something to me during one of our meetings that I haven't forgotten. You're not getting divorced from a woman. You're getting divorced from a lie. There's a difference. That line stuck with me because it captured exactly what I had been feeling, but couldn't articulate. Lisa responded to the legal notice late, like she thought ignoring it might make the whole thing disappear. When she finally sent her reply, it came with conditions and requests for the house, for joint belongings, and most importantly, for conversation. Not negotiation or mediation, but conversation. She wanted another chance to perform, another opportunity to spin the narrative in her favor. But I didn't show up for any of those conversations. We settled most of the divorce without ever being in the same room together. She got a car and a couple of pieces of furniture that she didn't even really care about. I didn't fight her on the small things because I didn't see the point. I was in the process of shedding the weight of her from my life. If she wanted the coffee table to make herself feel like she had won something, she could have it. But she hadn't won, not really. Because something fundamental had shifted during this entire process. Not in her, in me. Before all of this happened, I was the kind of guy who looked for the best in people, even after they had set the house on fire and asked for a match. I believed in love like it was mathematics. You give your all, you get it back, 1 + 1 = forever. Now I understood subtraction. I started spending more time alone. Good time. Not distracted time, not time spent drinking or filling the air with noise to drown out silence. I went on hikes through trails I'd never explored before. I got into woodworking, finding something therapeutic about creating things with my hands that would last. I even took a weekend trip up north and sat by a lake for 3 days with no cell service and nothing but time to think. I didn't check my phone once during that entire trip. One morning while I was packing up my tent, I found something folded in the side pocket of my backpack, a note I had written to myself months ago during a therapy session I had tried once and never went back to. The note said, "If you're reading this, it means you survived the worst part. Now you get to decide who you are without her." I folded it back up and smiled, because I already knew the answer. I was no longer a man trying to fix a marriage that was already rotting beneath the surface. I was no longer a fool searching for meaning in someone else's chaos. I was becoming myself again. Not Honey, not her safety net, not her collateral damage. Just me. Lisa had taken my trust, yes, but she hadn't taken my future. That part was mine to build again, and I was finally ready to start construction. The first time I really laughed after everything burned down, really laughed. It was over something completely stupid. Jake and I were watching a cooking show, and one of the contestants dropped an entire cake on the floor. Instead of panicking, he tried to pass it off as an intentional, deconstructed dessert, saying it with complete deadpan seriousness. The way he delivered that line sent Jake into a wheezing fit, and I cracked up right along with him. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. Lisa, Kevin, the letters, the lies, the house that no longer felt like mine. All of it just disappeared. And I realized in that moment that this was the first sound that had come out of me in months that wasn't heavy, that wasn't weighed down by betrayal and disappointment. That laugh was mine. Not borrowed, not forced, not performed for anyone else's benefit. After that, things started to shift in subtle but important ways. I wasn't healing in some cinematic character arc with long walks on the beach and a journal full of affirmations. It was just space. Space between the flashbacks, space between the waves of emotion, space between me and her memory. That same week, I ran into Jessica, one of Lisa's old friends and someone I hadn't seen since before the fallout. She was always the quiet one in their group, the one who didn't engage in Lisa's dramatics or feed into her need for constant attention. We crossed paths at a bookstore of all places. She was holding a novel I had read years ago. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said gently, without any of the awkwardness I might have expected. I shrugged. "Didn't expect to be here either." She tilted her head, studying my face. "How are you holding up?" That question used to crush me when people asked it, but now I found I could answer it without lying or putting on a performance. "Better than I should be," I said. "Worse than I want to be, but getting there." Jessica gave me a look that wasn't pity or sadness, but something closer to respect. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. "For what it's worth, I always thought you deserved better." I nodded. "Me too." She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. "Lisa's spiraling," she said quietly. "She's not who she was, even around us." "She never was who we thought she was," I replied. Jessica gave a sad little smile. "Guess not." That conversation stayed with me, not because of what Jessica had said about Lisa, but because of what it didn't stir in me. There was no twist in my gut when I heard about Lisa's current state. No temptation to chase closure or offer help. No flicker of hope that maybe this meant something for us. Just confirmation that I was truly done with the version of love that needed lies to survive. And Lisa. She was still trying to write the last chapter of our story like she owned the pen. She texted again, this time from a new number that I didn't recognize at first. The message said, "I heard you're seeing someone. Is it serious? I think I deserve to know." I almost laughed when I read that. Deserve. What she deserved was silence. And that's exactly what she got. I didn't respond to her message, and I didn't block the new number either. That would have felt like effort, like she was still important enough to require action from me. I just let her words hang there in the digital void, screaming for attention she was never going to get again. It wasn't about vengeance or trying to hurt her. That would have made her the center of my attention again, and she didn't get to be the center anymore. She had forfeited that privilege when she chose to build a secret life behind my back. From there, I focused on rebuilding my life in my own way. I got our old house listed for sale because there were too many memories clinging to the drywall, too many ghosts hiding in the cracks of the foundation. Selling it felt like closing the last door on a chapter I was ready to leave behind. Lisa tried to fight the sale through her lawyer, of course. She claimed the house was emotionally significant and that I was being vindictive by selling it. I let the court handle her objections and didn't say a word in my own defense. The judge saw through her manipulation easily enough, and the listing went live the next week. The first couple to tour the house called it charming. All I could think was, you have no idea what happened here. But that was good. Let them build something new in those rooms. Let them erase the history with fresh paint and new memories. Let them rip out the carpet where she once cried over nothing while I sat 3 feet away, completely clueless to the storm that was already brewing inside her mind. Let the house go. Let her go. It was almost poetic how quickly the offers came in. And with the money from the sale, I made one of the first real decisions for myself in years. I booked a trip, just me, somewhere far away, somewhere warm, somewhere that she had never touched with her presence. And I promised myself before I left, no thoughts of Lisa during this trip, just sun, salt water, silence, and the man I was learning how to be again. I stepped off the plane in Belize with nothing but a carry-on bag, a passport, and a mind I had finally pried free from Lisa's grip. It wasn't some grand escape or cliched eat, pray, love rebrand of my entire identity. I wasn't there to find myself. I knew exactly who I was. I just wanted to sit in a place that hadn't heard her name, hadn't seen her face, hadn't watched me fall apart and reassemble myself piece by piece. The first night, I walked the beach barefoot while the sky turned bruised purple and gold. The kind of sky that dares you to remember things you shouldn't. I didn't take pictures or text anyone updates. I just let the ocean talk to me in a language that didn't ask questions or need answers. No one called me honey there. No one expected anything from me. No one knew what had been broken or how long it had taken to heal. And for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't performing grief or dragging the ghost of a marriage behind me wherever I went. I was just a man breathing, standing in the quiet, finally whole again. One morning I woke up early and found a little cafe off the beaten path. I sat outside under a palm roof while the sun climbed slowly into the sky, painting everything in warm golden light. A woman passed by with a camera slung around her neck, not Lisa, not even close, and smiled at me like I was just another stranger in her frame, another face in a crowd of travelers. And it hit me in that moment. I was anonymous again. No baggage, no betrayal, no backstory that everyone knew about. Just me, sitting in a place where my history didn't matter and my future was unwritten. It was addicting, that freedom from being defined by what someone else had done to me. I spent the days diving into books, diving into clear blue water, and diving into the kind of deep sleep that only comes when your mind isn't constantly processing trauma. I let my phone die on day 4 and didn't bother recharging it until I was sitting in the airport lounge waiting for my flight back home. When I finally powered it up, there were 41 unread text messages waiting for me. 9 of them were from Lisa, sent over the course of my entire trip. The first one was from 6 days ago. I know you're away. I can't stop thinking about you. The second message read, I wish I'd met you after I healed. Maybe I wouldn't have ruined everything. Then came this one. You said I set fire to the house, but you never admitted that you lit some matches too. That last message made me pause and reread it 3 times. Not because I believed it or because it made me question my role in what happened, but because it showed just how far she was willing to go to rewrite history. Even now, months after everything had collapsed, she needed to level the playing field. She needed to drag me into the mud so she wouldn't be the only one stained by what had happened. But I was done with that version of reality. I deleted the entire thread without replying to any of her messages. I didn't even open the rest of them. Because when I stepped back into my apartment, back into my life, it was with clean feet. No ash, no footprints from the fire she wanted to keep dancing in. Over the next few weeks, she tried again through different channels. Email, Facebook messages, even a letter she left directly in my mailbox. It was hand-delivered, not mailed, still written in that same handwriting I used to find endearing, still trying to play some kind of long game that only existed in her mind. But this time, I didn't read the letter. Instead, I burned it. I lit a match, my match, and dropped it into the metal trash bin on my balcony. I watched the paper curl and blacken until her words were nothing but smoke rising into a sky that didn't remember her name. And in that moment, I realized the most important thing of all. Lisa hadn't ruined me. She had revealed me. Because when someone shows you how far they're willing to fall while blaming you for the drop, you learn who they really are. And more importantly, you learn who you are when you choose not to follow them down. I didn't need closure from her anymore. I was the closure. By the time fall rolled around, Lisa had disappeared from my life completely. Or maybe I had disappeared from hers. Either way, the silence between us finally settled into something permanent. Not tense, not unfinished, just empty. Like a theater after the final curtain, with seats still warm but the actors gone and the stage stripped bare. There were no more texts, no more letters, no more accidental run-ins at grocery stores. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that used to terrify me when I was still hoping for some kind of resolution. Now it felt earned, like something I had worked hard to achieve. I moved into a new place, smaller, simpler, with no echo of her laugh bouncing off the walls. There was no drawer full of forgotten hair ties, no shared closet packed with things she never wore but couldn't bring herself to throw away. I didn't bring much with me from the old life. Just the essentials and a handful of things that actually meant something to me. I kept a mug Jake had gotten me that says, "World's Okayest Friend," my grandfather's watch, and a single framed photo from a solo trip I had taken before Lisa, before all of this happened. In the picture, I'm standing on a cliff in Montana with my arms wide open, like I was waiting for something big to happen in my life. Now, when I look at that photo, I realize I was waiting for peace. I was waiting for honesty, for a life not built on conditions and hidden agendas. And here I was, finally stepping into exactly that kind of existence. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. I wasn't suddenly thriving or posting inspirational quotes about resilience on social media. Healing wasn't aesthetic or Instagram-worthy. It was slow, weird, ugly, and quiet. But it was real in a way that my marriage never had been. I picked up new habits that were entirely my own. I started cooking regularly, taking morning runs through neighborhoods I'd never explored. I even started seeing someone, not dating seriously, just having conversations that felt natural and unforced. Her name is Sophia, and we met at a used bookshop where we ended up arguing about whether character-driven stories are better than plot-driven ones. She won the argument, and I liked that about her. There's something gentle about talking to someone who doesn't know your damage yet, who looks at you like you're not made of sharp edges and broken promises. It felt good. It felt safe. But I wasn't rushing into anything this time. Not again. I was building brick by brick, taking time to lay a proper foundation instead of pouring concrete into a mold of hope and calling it love. As for Lisa, word eventually reached me through the grapevine. Jessica sent me a message one afternoon. Nothing dramatic, just a brief heads up. "Saw Lisa the other day," she wrote. "She looks tired. Heard she moved in with her sister. Kevin's long gone, obviously. Just thought you should know." When I read that message, I didn't feel anything. Not pity, not revenge, not vindication, just distance. She was on her own path now, one she had chosen and carved with every lie she told while looking me directly in the eye. And I was on mine. The funny thing is, I don't even think about Kevin anymore. He was just a symptom, a convenient spark for a fire that was already waiting to be lit. Lisa didn't cheat because she was tempted by some irresistible force. She cheated because she wanted to. She wanted something else, someone else, a different version of her life. And when that fell apart, she wanted me again. Not because she loved me, but because I represented safety and familiarity. But I'm not her safety net anymore. Not her soft landing, not her second chance, not her backup plan. I've been sleeping better lately. The nightmares stopped completely. The dreams stopped too, mostly. No more flashes of her face in quiet moments. No more imagined reconciliations where she cries and begs, and I forgive her in slow motion like some kind of romantic movie. That fantasy is dead. I buried it quietly and left no flowers on the grave. The last piece of her I had was our old voicemail greeting, saved on a backup drive from years ago. I deleted it without hesitation, just clicked the button and it was gone. There's something final about that sound, that click followed by empty confirmation. Like slamming the lid on a box and sealing it with tape. Like turning a key for the very last time. This isn't a story about heartbreak anymore. This is a story about returning to yourself, to truth, to a life where love doesn't require the sacrifice of your dignity or your peace of mind. The Lisa chapter is over, but the story, my story, is just beginning. It's been a year now, one full orbit around the sun since the night she left for her so-called girls' night and came back to find a note and a silence she wasn't expecting. People ask me sometimes, not often, but sometimes, "Do you ever miss her?" And I don't lie when I answer. I say I miss who I thought she was. There's a difference between missing someone and missing the illusion of someone. I don't miss the Lisa who actually existed. I miss the version I built of her in my mind. The one who danced in the kitchen barefoot, who laughed until she cried, who touched my shoulder while I drove like I was the only steady thing in her world. But that version wasn't real. The real Lisa was someone else entirely. Someone who smiled at me with one face and texted someone else with another. Someone who sat beside me at dinner while planning her next lie across the table from her husband. Someone who chose herself, not in a bold, self-healing kind of way, but in a selfish coward's way. She didn't fight for us. She didn't lose me in some tragic turn of events. She left me before I even knew we were in a war. And the truth is, I'm grateful she did. Because if she hadn't shown her true colors, I might still be there. I'd still be sitting across from someone who pitied me more than she loved me. Someone who used my loyalty as a leash to keep me in place while she explored other options. I would have kept building a life around someone who had already picked up a match and was just waiting for the right moment to light it. But now I wake up in my new apartment alone, but truly alive. Now I walk past mirrors without feeling like I'm looking at a ghost. Now I love myself in a way that doesn't require being needed by someone else to feel valid. Jake's still around, being the kind of friend who doesn't need constant updates on your emotional state. Sophia and I still talk, sometimes over coffee, sometimes in long text conversations about nothing and everything. It's not a love story yet. Maybe one day it will be, maybe it won't. And that's perfectly okay with me, because I'm not chasing a happy ending anymore. I'm living a real one, built on honesty and self-respect rather than hope and compromise. Lisa tried to contact me once more, about 3 months ago. It was a voicemail this time. I recognized the number and let it ring, but later I listened to what she had to say. Her voice was quiet and hollow, not manipulative this time, not angry, just small and defeated. "I know you don't want to hear this," she said, "and I know I don't deserve to say anything, but I think about you every day. I ruined everything, and I'd give anything to go back. I hope you're happy, honey. I really do." She didn't ask me to come back. She didn't say she loved me. Just honey, one last time. But that name doesn't belong to me anymore. That name was a piece of a life that no longer fits, like a jacket I outgrew without noticing. It served its time and carried its weight, but I've shed it now. I left it behind with all the other versions of myself that tried to hold something broken together with willpower and blind faith. I'm not honey anymore. I'm not her husband. I'm not a victim. I'm the man who walked out of the fire without dragging the ashes with him. So here's what I'll say if you've read this far. If you're in the middle of something similar, if you're doubting yourself or feeling that twisting sensation in your gut while you keep trying to drown it with hope, don't ignore the quiet voice inside you. It's usually telling you the truth, even when that truth is painful to accept. Don't mistake manipulation for love. Don't wait around hoping to be chosen by someone who's already shown you where you rank in their priorities. Choose yourself first, always. And when they finally realize what they've lost and come crawling back with apologies and promises, don't go back. Not because you're angry or because of wounded pride, but because once you've experienced what real peace feels like, you'll never willingly trade it for war again. This was never really a story about Lisa. It was always about me, about learning who I am when I'm not trying to fix someone else's broken pieces, about discovering what I'm worth when I'm not accepting crumbs and calling them a feast, about understanding the difference between being loved and being used. And it ends here. Not with a bang, not with a broken heart that never heals, but with a man standing in front of a mirror, smiling at his reflection, feeling whole and free for the first time in years. The future is unwritten, and that's exactly how I want it. Clean slate, clear conscience, and a life built on truth instead of hope. Some stories don't end with reconciliation or closure or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes they just end with someone walking away and never looking back. Sometimes that's the victory,